In a couple words, I'd say overlanding is car camping.
Overlanding to me, again, just to distill it down, is the self-sufficient overland travel where the travel itself is a huge part of the enjoyment of the trip. It's not the final destination, it's the how you get there, what you see along the way, and the freedom to be able to choose whether you get to your final destination, even if you have one. You know, you might just divert off down another road and explore a whole different area and have a whole different adventure than you'd expected when you started.
So for me, overlanding was something that I wrestled a lot with when I came up with the name East Coast Overland Adventures, because I wanted to draw a distinction between what I consider overland travel and adventure travel. So for me, overlanding is extended duration, maybe not necessarily the most intense form of travel, but it's definitely extended duration. There's a measure of self-sufficiency there.
My name's Dan Grec from The Road Chose Me. I drove the Jeep behind me 54,000 miles around Africa, and I drove my previous Jeep 40,000 miles from Alaska to Argentina. So when people ask me what is overlanding or what does it mean to me, I really think about going places that I've never been before. I think about seeing beautiful places, meeting new people, trying new foods, and having amazing experiences like kayaking with icebergs or poking lava with a stick. All of the sort of amazing experiences that the world has to offer, that's what really comes to mind for me. And it just so happens that I take my vehicle, and that's actually how I'm able to go and see the world and have all these experiences.
That's an interesting question, because we call our company Overland Experts, or Bruce called our company Overland Experts years ago, long before I was there. And when Scott Brady started Overland Journal, he actually called Bruce and asked permission to use the word overland in the name for Overland Journal. And Bruce was like, I don't care. Because as far as Bruce was concerned, it was a given word. It was like that company backcountry.com that then started trying to sue people for using the word backcountry when it had been a word used by outdoor people for 100 years, you know? And so overland is a word.
What is overlanding to me? That's a tough question. It's meeting new people, it's traveling to new places, it's experiencing new cultures, it's influencing local economies, it's living out of your truck. I love camping. That's it. I love a campfire. I love sleeping in a tent. I like cooking outside. I like hiking, I like biking, I like rafting, and overlanding gives me the opportunity to do that. I like avoiding interstates. I like avoiding paved roads and finding dirt and finding gravel and finding four-wheel drive tracks. But the thing I like the most about overlanding is the experiences that we have along the way, the experiences that we have off of the interstate. It's the planning, it's the trip, it's the people that you influence, it's the people that you spend nights around the campfire with, it's the drinks that we all enjoy, it's the music, it's the trucks, it's the stories that we can tell our kids. I mean, over the last 8 years, I've filmed all of our adventures because I'd like to see my son grow up with the option to say, hey guys, let's go take the trucks out this weekend and go where Dad went 10, 15 years ago. You know, that's exciting. You know, encouraging people, encouraging youth, encouraging families to get out and explore. I mean, today in this environment that we live in, domestic travel is where it's at. And exploring our national parks, our national forests, It's time for that. This is the time that overlanding takes off. There's a draw, and there's something exciting to the opportunity of feeling homeless.
I started thinking about, I've thought about it a lot because people ask me, you know, and there's a, when I looked it up in a dictionary, and this was like prior to, a dictionary written prior to the phenomena of overlanding, it said, well, they traveled by ship to this point, and then they traveled overland from there to get to this point. And it was like, so it's sort of comparable to people traveling overland after they've been traveling over the sea. It's kind of like, okay, what does that mean back in that context? Well, they had to be self-sufficient. They had to be prepared to deal with whatever they had to deal with. They had to find their way. They didn't necessarily know where they were going. They thought they were looking for something, but they didn't know where to find it, so they were just going to go explore and find it. They were going to travel overland. And then, you know, by that definition, anything traveling by interstate could be overlanding. You know, if you're traveling overland to get somewhere, but now it's sort of been tied into the off-road industry. And from the perspective of overland experts, our concentration is, if you're going to travel overland, you're going to have to deal with whatever is in front of your vehicle to get there. So you better have, one, the appropriate vehicle. Two, you better know how to drive that vehicle properly. And that's what we're about, is the driving part of it. But it also means self-sufficiency. It's not just going out for a day and driving off-road. It's traveling for days where you may be driving in some pretty intense off-road situations, but you have to have a vehicle that's capable of carrying you, your supplies, whatever you need to be self-sufficient, because ostensibly you're traveling in a place where there's not going to be much facility available. The facility is what you have. My feeling about it is that, you know, one thing is the whole point of all of this is people are going out to have a good time, and they're amusing themselves, and they're finding something to go do that they think is going to be fun. Now, from Overland Experts' perspective, a lot of the people we teach do this need to know how to drive on terrain with a given vehicle, and they're professional. They have a reason to go from A to B to C and be able to get back again to A without breaking their vehicle and having the skills to do so. And so it's a professional level of driving that we teach. The person who's recreational, you know, who knows? I think it's funny that there are a lot of people, and I've worked in the outdoor business for a long time, and there are a lot of people that want to buy all the gear and have no idea what it's really all for. They just think it looks cool on their truck. And I've seen overland vehicles with every kind of possible thing. I mean, when the truck parks and they unfold everything on the truck, they've unfolded, you know, a 5-star hotel room in the middle of wherever they are. And yet all that stuff has added so much weight and so much cumbersome accoutrement to their vehicle that they've actually decreased its capability as an off-road vehicle. It's probably still more capable than a camper, you know, than your standard camper, but at the same time, they've really hampered what they've done, you know, to the vehicle. They've spent a lot of money and put a lot of things and don't even really know, but you know, if they're enjoying themselves and they drive out into the woods somewhere and they set up all their stuff and, you know, they grill some steaks and drink some scotch and they're overlanding. So that's cool, you know, that's cool. And then, my wife and I go out and we don't carry any of that stuff with us. We stay in B&Bs. We off-road all day long and we stay in a B&B somewhere. And then we go off-road all day long to somewhere else and stay in another B&B. We don't carry the B&B in the truck. We stay in the B&B. And a lot of times when you get into a serious off-road vehicle, it's barely street legal. And you're not going to take a long trip in it. You're going to haul it somewhere on a trailer. Well, that's not overlanding. Overlanding is going there in the vehicle, drive to the place in the vehicle, off-road in the vehicle, and drive home in the vehicle at the very least. And if you're going to camp, you're carrying all that stuff with you. And you're still off-roading, if that's what you're going to do.
Well, for me, it's a bit of a complicated question because I've been doing this my entire life. When I was very, very young, living in South Africa, my parents would throw me in the back of a Land Rover for our holidays and drive off into the African wilderness, basically through the deserts of Botswana and through Zimbabwe and Namibia, always on basically self-drive photo safaris. I grew up doing this, and my parents always had this idea that they would drive from South Africa back to Europe when their time in Africa was finished. And unfortunately, that's something that never happened. Instead, we immigrated to the US, and life kind of carried on, and we got in the way. But that idea was always in my head, and it never left. And I constantly thought about it. Seeing the videos of the Camel Trophy, I applied for that as well. In '94, applied for the Camel Trophy. Always wanted to go off and basically do these expeditions out in the wilderness. And in 2004, some friends and I and my wife, Connie, drove from London to Cape Town. So big trip, 9 months, basically going down the west side of Africa. And that sealed the deal for me. I was always going to be stuck doing this. I mean, because I loved it. I absolutely loved that style of travel. So we got back to the US and kind of got involved with the burgeoning overland community here in the US. Got involved with Overland Journal, Expedition Portal, helped Jonathan and Roseanne Hansen start the Overland Expo series, and have been working with Overland Expo ever since, mostly on the training side. Yeah, just loved every minute of it. Loved everything to do with it, and loved to bring new people to overlanding and show them what it was all about. To the extent that in 2008, I actually started the overlanding definition on Wikipedia, and that's been going and growing ever since. So to me, overlanding has been a very complicated subject, because I now run a company with some friends of mine called 7P Overland, and we do trips and training, and we actually try and get money from doing this overlanding thing. But at the same token, when I'm off basically doing vacations by myself or with my wife and I, or with friends as well, we are doing overland trips, like either in Australia or Southern Africa, which are two of our favorite destinations, North Africa, wherever the fancy takes us. So for me, it's basically a massive part of my life. But I suppose, distilled down to its true essence, what does it mean to me, or what brings me to overlanding? And I think it's just the freedom to travel where you want, when you want. Modern four-wheel drive vehicles and ADV motorcycles give you the ability to go down tracks and go to places that few people can reach. They give you the ability to get to very, very remote parts of the world. And to me, that sort of travel, that travel where you get to drive down a dirt road, see a road off to the left or to the right or something like that, and get to take it. And then if you find a beautiful campsite at the end or a beautiful place to stay, you camp there, and you have the freedom and also the self-sustaining ability to do it. So you've got the food, the water, everything on your vehicle that you can do. So,
in contrast, adventure travel is where you're definitely going to maybe a particular destination. So for me, growing up on the East Coast, a bucket list trip of mine was always to go to Moab, Utah. And I wanted to build a Jeep that I could drive across the country, go to Moab, do some of the iconic Jeep trails in Moab, visit the national parks, do some camping, and then turn around and drive home, all in the same vehicle, again, with that degree of self-sufficiency. But the intensity for a trip like that with the trails I'm hitting is a little bit higher. And a lot of times when you are a international traveler and you're doing a very long trip where you're out for months or years, you don't want to seek out obstacles. You don't want to seek out that hardcore terrain because you don't want to risk breaking your vehicle. You know, I break a vehicle here in the United States on a weekend trip. I call AAA, I get my vehicle towed to a shop, I get it repaired, then I drive home. If you're 1,000 miles from home or 2,000 miles from home, or you're on a different continent, you don't want to risk breaking that vehicle. So the length and duration of that trip and the remoteness you're on kind of lowers the overall intensity of the terrain you're on. It's still an intense trip. just a different kind of intensity. And perfect example of that is my buddy Dan Grec and I. You know, he and I always go back and forth. What is overlanding? What is adventure travel? And I'm now to the point now where I almost don't want to consider myself an overlander because I'm more into the adventure travel. I built a Jeep. I like to go rock crawling. I go to Uwharrie National Forest. I go to Roush Creek Off-Road Park. I go to Moab, Utah, and I'm seeking out those iconic trails. But I'm kind of taking that overland approach to it. I'm camping. I built my trailer to be self-sufficient. But in contrast, you know, Dan Grec built a Jeep, shipped it to Africa, and drove around for 3 years, you know, and every time he got to a major obstacle, he was like, I'm gonna take a bypass, or he's gonna take it nice and easy. Whereas for me, I'm like, bring me that obstacle. That's what I'm out there for. And I think that's kind of the biggest difference between overlanding and adventure travel.
We can get caught up on the definition of overlanding all day long, but what's important is that you get outside.
It's like the guy, you know, I worked at an outdoor store, the guy who walks around, he's got North Face head to toe, and he doesn't like it when his boots get dirty. You know, and there are people like that with trucks built like that. They're showpieces. They're shiny and they're beautiful. No dents, no scratches, no dirt. Hey, if you're having fun, it's your money.
So there's no doubt about it. For me, overlanding is about getting out there and having adventures.
Maybe that'll draw something out of you and inspire you to go and take up this overlanding lifestyle, whatever it is. Take it to heart and go and do it and explore for yourself and on your own. So I hope that was helpful, guys. Cheers.